I cannot believe how fast time is flying. Can you? It's unbelievable. I feel like I just got my summer shirts out of the closet. And I go into the store the other day, and there was Halloween decorations. It's flying by. I can't believe this is our final week of this series. Not so secret sauce. This is kind of like our summer series, and to me, that's a little depressing. I love summer. I love the heat. I love being outside. I love seeing the smiles on people's faces. You don't really get that in the winter. People tend to hibernate, and they're not smiling. But so I just can't believe we're already here. Well, we've been studying the second letter of Peter, and this is a letter that was written just prior to his death, so that gives you some context of what he's writing about, and I think it gives us some context about the importance of what he's trying to say, kind of culminating his whole life. And in this letter, he lays out for us what we're calling a recipe for living a full life of God. I think a life which all of us at some point in time really desire for ourselves. Now, some of you know I recently began trying to do some cooking at home, no fire alarms yet, but I found that cooking is a lot like chemistry class. If you add the ingredients in the wrong order, or if you add the wrong ingredients, you can either get an explosion or you can get a complete bust, which has been my bread recipe over and over and over again. But I'm working on it. But speaking of cooking, I did bring my secret sauce for today. So if you're coming to the lunch at 11:30, you get to try Pastor Tom's secret sauce. You won't die. Look, you're all like, oh no, what do I say? Well, in this recipe that we've been studying these past weeks, we've discovered there's an effective way for us to live as a Christian and to live a full life of God. And the ingredient that Peter gives us today, this is the last ingredient. This is the absolutely critical ingredient. It's like for you bakers out there, this is the yeast that's in the bread. This is the baking powder in the cake. This is, for me, the sugar in the cookie. This is it. This is the one that all of us, our Christians, are called to realize in our lives. You see, Peter's not just concerned that we would take some of these ingredients and kind of sprinkle them when it's convenient or when we have time in our lives. Peter really wants us to know that we need all of these ingredients. And we're not to add this last ingredient just when it's easy or when it's convenient. In fact, we're asked to add this ingredient all the time, especially when it's difficult. We have to allow the Spirit that dwells within us to develop all of these characteristics that we've been talking about these past couple of weeks. So perhaps as I list these ingredients again for you, as you hear them, you might hear not just a recipe to a final product, but maybe you'll hear more of a journey, steps along the way, steps that move us from self-centered and self-focused, and move us towards community, move us towards focusing on others, and yes, moving us towards building a kingdom here on earth. You see, we started with goodness, right? Goodness, it's based upon God's calling in our lives. And then from goodness, we were to add knowledge. And knowledge wasn't just simple facts and figures that we could spout out. Knowledge was more than just information. Knowledge would lead us to wisdom. And wisdom leads us to transformation. And then we've discovered that the more and more that we know about Jesus, the more that we build a deeper and deeper relationship with him, our hearts are changed. And then from goodness and knowledge, we're to add self-control. And self-control we discovered is a good thing because then what we're doing is we're submitting to the Spirit's direction in our lives. We're following the Spirit's guide, not our own. And then to self-control and to goodness and to knowledge, we're to add perseverance. To keep moving on, to get up every day and to choose to walk with Jesus and to not go down a different path. And then to perseverance, we're to add godliness. Remember, godliness was about saturating and marinating our lives in the grace of God until it just becomes who we are, a natural kind of outflowing into the world. And then the final ingredient, or the next step, if you will, on this journey, Peter says it's the most crucial, and I think it might be the most difficult for us. Peter says, to godliness add affection for others. Affection for others is love. Love. Love is one of those tricky words. I think today in our society, we've actually done great disrespect to the word love. I mean, we say that we love puppies, and we say that we love kittens, we say that we love summertime, and we love snowy days. We love ice cream and chocolate cake. We say we love Mike Trout. We say we love the Eagles. We say we love sleeping in. We love reading a good book. We even say that we love our husbands and our wives. Now, guys, I know that's a little difficult for you to wrap around. That may be a little too touchy-feely. But we can say that we love our best friends. We can say that we love our neighbor who has all those great tools that we can borrow. We love the guy with the boat who lets us use it. But here's the thing about how we've disrespected this word. We typically think and we say that we love things that give us something back, that give us something in return. You know, food makes us feel good, and we love these kinds of food. Friends that we love, they've got our backs. They're there when we need them, and vice versa. They give us company. Sports give us great entertainment, and they make us feel excited when they're winning. Even our spouses give us love back in return. But that's not the love that we're talking about. That's not the love that Peter is talking about. You see, when Peter uses the word love, he uses a very specific kind of word. He uses the word agape. And we've talked about this word before. It means love in its highest form. It means love that is selfless, sacrificial, and unconditional. It's a level of love that you choose. It's not a level of love that you fall into. It's a level of love that you select and you choose even when it's very, very difficult. It's a level of love that we choose even when you are different from someone else, when you think differently, when you have different opinions, when you have different backgrounds, when you speak a different language. It's a level of love that we choose. It's a level of love, even though that there's a difference, we still choose it. It's a level that gives you absolutely nothing in return. Nothing. You get nothing. And yet in the end, you still come out better than before. But it's our choice. In fact, when you and I choose agape love, it costs us something. When we love like Jesus, it costs us something. You know, for many parents who are in this room and those of you who are listening online, you know this kind of love. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes this happens repeatedly in our lives. I know I, for instance, cried every time I wrote that college tuition check. It physically hurt. Having a newborn who sleeps very little. We sacrifice our own sleep and sometimes our own sanity. I remember changing those biohazard diapers. I sacrificed my own health. Having a toddler that you have to hold down while the doctor examines them. Watching your child be wheeled away into surgery. These things cost us something. That's a love that takes from us. Sacrificial and unconditional love costs us something. If you and I are going to be committed to living the way of Jesus, it's going to cost you something. In fact, agape love demands it. It's the kind of love that costs. And truly the church as a whole, the gathering of believers, the church has always been at its absolute best when it's giving itself away. Not when it's arguing about the colors or authority or process or judgments or trying to figure out who's on the right side and who's on the wrong side. The church is always at its best when it's producing agape love into the community, when it's giving at a sacrifice. It's the way that we give here at the food closet. We give away food from our own kitchens and cabinets. It's the way that we give at the Hope Center, spending our time and our resources just to have fellowship with someone who might be lonely and hungry. It's the way that we give when we go on our missions trips and we just show the love of Jesus just by simply being there and helping people and serving them. This is when the church truly shines. And it is what the church was always called to do, agape love. Now, initially, all these things sound great, right? We talk about them and we think, oh, that's so beautiful, and we love that picture. But actually, I think when push really comes to shove, when it really comes to the boots on the ground, we don't actually like to give up things in our lives. We actually don't look forward to giving up maybe buying new clothes or movie tickets or going on vacation that we've waited for all year. Sacrifice, personally, really doesn't sound all that fun, does it? Our offerings to the church, our offerings of our resources given to us by God, they slowly become more and more about whatever is left over, or whether or not I feel good on that day about something. They become more and more about self and less about sacrifice. When we ask people to serve time and volunteer, there's a decision that has to be made. Well, is my employer going to pay me for that day? Do I have plans for that day? Is that my only day off in which I do what I want to do? Am I going to give up my vacation to sacrifice and serve? Sacrificing doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun when it becomes a personal decision. However, we have been given a great example to follow. We've been given a great model to follow, and it's one that shows us that thought process is not true. We've been given a recipe. We've been given a blueprint. We've been given a model who has shown for us that there are great rewards when we sacrifice, when we are selfless, when we give unconditionally. It's through the teachings of Jesus. It's through the person of Jesus. And it's told through the life of Jesus. There's a social media platform that some of you may be familiar with. It's called TikTok. Probably half the room says yes, and the other half is like, a what? And the one half that said yes is probably on it right now. But it's an app that you're allowed to share with other users quick videos. They're only 15, 20 seconds long, whatever, and they go out there and then they disappear, and they get to show you all sorts of stuff. And TikTok really began with cute pictures of cats doing funny things. And everybody was going, oh, it's so cute. But it has changed. It's transformed. This social media platform is now filled with people who are teaching things, how to cook, how to dance, how to tell a story, how to perform a magic trick, how to perform grooming techniques, and how to apply makeup, and all these teachings that they now do. And you know why? It's because people feel empowered if they can see someone else do it. If someone else can show them how to do it, then they feel more power and more confidence that they can do it. I think it has something to do with our DIY infatuation that we have in our generation, building furniture out of wood pallets. Does anyone think that looks comfortable? I'm just wondering. Or even how to dye your hair purple, which I haven't tried yet. Or my favorite, how to make sourdough bread. I will never get that. But if you and I can watch someone, if we can actually see them teaching us, it gives us the courage to try and do it. Well, guess what? Long before TikTok came around, long before TED Talks were out there and teaching us how to do things, there was a person who was teaching you how to live. And that was Jesus. Jesus did it. And in the scriptures, in the Bible, we read how Jesus shows us to add goodness and knowledge and self-control and to persevere and to then add godliness and saturate our lives, and then how to show love. Jesus has shown you how to have a full life of God. And you know what? Well, this is what he said. Let me go here first. The Gospel of John, chapter 15. Jesus said this. This is my commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. No one has greater love than to give up one's life for one's friends. Now, Jesus wasn't just saying this. He was living this. And he was telling them and us exactly what he was about to do. He wasn't just saying, oh, go do it. He was saying, this is what I am doing. I have chosen to give up my life for you. I have chosen to sacrifice my entire life for you. And this is what I am doing. Now, he doesn't just do that on the cross. He does that throughout his whole life, his whole life story. And we see it because each and every time someone else wants to decide to take Jesus' life for him, it doesn't happen. No one else makes this decision other than Jesus. No one else gets to just take his life. Jesus chooses when, where, and how for him to sacrifice his life for his friends, for us. In Matthew's gospel, in chapter 26, Jesus knows that he's facing this painful and this tragic death. And his humanity comes over him, and he gets down on his knees and he prays to his Father. And he says, not as I will, but as you will, let it be done. The agape love lays down all of our own concerns, lays down all of our own desires. It lays down all of our own comforts. And it says, God, your will, not mine. He chooses to give his life. Hours just before his death, Jesus goes to the courts. He goes before Pilate, who's the Roman governor of the time. And he's there with first the soldiers that come to him. And the soldiers come and they find him because he has been betrayed by one of the disciples named Judas. And the soldiers come and we think, okay, now this is where someone else makes the decision. Someone else takes Jesus' life, but that's not what happens. Because Jesus reminds them of whose authority he works under. And in Matthew 26:47, he reminds them, could I not call on my Father to just send the angels to help me? Couldn't I just call a whole legion army of angels to come down here and take care of all of you? But I don't, because it's my choice to sacrifice. It's my choice to love in this way. And then he does get to Pilate. The soldiers lead him off, and he chooses to go with them, and he gets to Pilate, the Roman governor. And the Roman governor, he kind of thinks a lot of himself. And so he says, I have all power and authority over you. I choose life and death. And Jesus reminds him again. He says, no. In the Gospel of John, in chapter 19, he says, no. You have no authority over me unless my Father has already given it to you. Again, it is Jesus' choice to love. And then finally, you all know parts of the story when he's hanging on the cross. and he's there for what seems like forever. And all that he has done in praying for those who are around them and asking for forgiveness for those who put him there. And he's about to breathe his last breath. And we find something very, very interesting if we read this section a bit slower than sometimes we do. In the Gospel of John, in chapter 19, Jesus says this. He says, "It is completed." He chose to give his life, and he controlled it. And he said, now is the time for me to give up my life, to sacrifice, to be selfless, and to love all of you unconditionally. And he took his last breath. He bowed his head, and he gave up his life for you and for me, so that you and I could receive the greatest reward ever, salvation and eternal life, forgiveness for all of the sins that have caused death in this world, and to offer to those of us who follow him eternal life. Peter writes to the early church, and he says, to your faith life, you're to add goodness and knowledge and self-control and perseverance and godliness and love. And this is the kind of love he's talking about. Jesus hanging on the cross, choosing not to call down the armies of angels, choosing not to go against his Father's word, choosing not to fall into any trap, choosing to hang on the cross, and choosing to breathe his last breath. All for us, so that you too could live the full life of God. Agape love means that laying down our own wills, our own desires, our own comfort means that's the most loving thing that you can do for someone else. Putting yourself aside for someone else is the most loving thing that you can do. And yes, you can do anything you want. You have the freedom. You can say, do, act, respond, think, but you can also choose. You can also choose to love. And here's where it gets difficult. You have to choose to love those who are different. You have to choose to love those who maybe speak different or have a different background or wear different clothes or have different skin color, or perhaps they're a different political party, or they live in a different neighborhood, or they have a different kind of background than you do. Maybe they don't agree with you. This is where it gets difficult. We have to love those who we don't necessarily like. And we have to choose to do that. Just like Jesus chose to love you and I when we were sinners, when we were filled with faults and failures. And Jesus chose to love you even though you may have thought that you were unlovable. When the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, he tried to express the magnitude, the awe, and the reverence of this. And we've often read this at weddings, and this is something we probably should read a little bit slower. 1 Corinthians 13 says there's all these things that you can do, but if you don't have true love, then it's all worthless. He says you can do all the right things that you want to do, but if you don't have agape love, then you have nothing. You can look good and still not be good. He says, look, you can try and try and try to put lipstick on a pig, but it won't change what you really have. Without agape love, you are nothing. I believe that this love, agape love, is the most important ingredient to living a full life of God. I believe it's the most powerful force that we have in this world. I believe that it can change lives, families, and communities. I believe it's the most important because we need it so badly. And I believe God knows that because he created us. And I believe that's why he gives it to us so freely and so selflessly and unconditionally. There is nothing we have to do. Jesus hung on that cross for you, and there was nothing that you had to do to ask him to do that. He did it willingly, and he chose to do it. When you and I see agape love in our lives, we see the change that it makes. We see the smiles on people's faces. We see the transformation of lives. We get to see people just wondering, why are you doing this for me? Why are you here? Why are you talking to me? Why are you helping me? And they get to see Jesus in action through you. I wonder what could happen. What could happen if we were a people who chose to love? What could happen in this world if all of us in this room chose agape love? How much change could we make? How much transformation could happen, not only in us, but in everyone that we meet? What if we went out today and started loving the people who are the most different from us? The neighbor you've never talked to, or the person at work who speaks a different language, or someone at school who has a different economic background than you do, or has a different like than you do. What if we went out and started just loving one another? Do you think in the end that it would cost us more than we would receive? Or do you think we would receive so much the cost wouldn't matter? I believe if we can love this way, then we will begin building the kingdom that God wants. The kingdom that God truly desires for all of us. Love. I want to urge you today just to start to love. Just love. Make a sacrifice for someone else. Choose to love someone other than yourself. Choose to give generously. Choose to volunteer some of your most precious time. Choose to lift someone or support someone. I'm going to guarantee you something today. That if you just choose to agape love, you will receive a far greater reward than you can ever imagine. We don't do it for the reward. We do it for Jesus. It's no secret to living a secret life filled with God. Amen.